All right, here it is. It's our Monday visit. It's with our guy. It's our GM. No one else has got a GM here on their weekly show. Jim Duquette with us, former Major League Baseball general manager, Mets and Orioles. MLB Network Radio. They're on Sirius XM. Follow Jim on X at Jim Duquette GM. It's all brought to you by Flatstick Pub. Whether it's a date night, guys night, ladies night, large group event, they got you covered at Flatstick Pub. Check out one of their 6 locations in the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. You have enjoy your weekend. Good baseball weekend there, Jim.
Excellent.
Any travel ball?
Excellent weekend. We had some travel ball during the week. Nothing on the weekend. We were 1-1 on the travel ball scene. So that is, it's not bad. As you know, I actually prefer, since you're coaching too, I prefer about 500. You like to have a little challenge for your guy. You don't want to dominate. You don't want to be losing every single game. It's right about 500, okay, which is where we are right now, is perfect.
Has Jim Duquette ever got heated with an umpire during these tournaments and games?
It's difficult not to, especially when you're watching the umpiring at the major league level. The trickle down into travel ball, as you can imagine, and as you know, we'll just say it's watered down, the umpiring in travel ball. So. I
How old are your kids again?
Because I know that people and parents and players are watching, so I try to be a little coy about it, and I'll have certain comments like, "That's a really good pitch, and it was a strike last inning," something along those lines, to let the umpire know that I'm questioning his calls without being too crazy about it.
How old are your boys again?
They're the 12U team. So, yeah, they're all – we have a couple 11-year-old kids on there, but they're all 12. So, it's an impressionable age right there.
It's probably it's herding cats sometimes, yes. I would imagine.
Oh, my Lord. As you know, like it is – you have to repeat yourself several times, and the attention span isn't quite what it is at other levels, we'll say that.
I think my greatest frustration with them is it's a couple things. One, yes, having them pay attention to who's up to bat, check the lineup, and then can we please, for the love of God, get a bat boy? Someone hey, Jimmy, you're the bat boy. Can you go get the bat?
Yes.
After maybe that's when I struggle with the most.
Very, very simple things that you think kind of take for granted, and or how about the other part? Am I still in the position that I'm playing? If I didn't say anything to you, go back to the same position. Yes.
Or the center fielder did not take a ball out with him in between innings to warm up. You have to grab a ball, bud. Every time you run out there, you got to grab a baseball. All right. Well, Mariners are playing great. I know Houston was struggling. And they've been struggling all season long. We can talk about their issues, Jim. But boy, the M's came in there and they kicked their ass all over the place for the most part, and should have swept them if they didn't, have kind of a defensive and base running meltdown on Friday night.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that you really like to see, with them. The offense is spotty still, but I think when you look at how good the pitching has been overall, you keep riding that out, and occasionally you're going to have, a bad offensive output or a bad pitching effort or whatever. But during the stretches has been unbelievable. I mean, Miller was solid again too. But I mean, you win 6 series in a row. That's that type of streak. It's just there's 2 different ways to go about getting to the first place or into the competition, right? You can do it the way the Twins did it. Win 12 in a row, go really quickly. That never happens. Then you gotta have these crazy summer sausages in a package on these superstitions, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, like the Mariners are. Really good pitching, and for the most part, really good defense and timely hitting. So, I think for the sustainability of it for the Mariners, that's a better sign long term for them.
Would you be on board with the traveling summer sausage that no doubt is probably pretty ripe if they would have opened up that bag?
Rocco Baldelli is the manager, and I had him on my show, and he's played along with this, but he was like, do not open, do not touch. If it is open, somebody's going to get sick. And I think he's genuinely concerned. And didn't mind, I think, the loss because now he could get rid of that thing.
He could just finally be done with it. Go to the Astros for a second. Are they done? Or do you think, I mean, Cal Raleigh said after the game on Sunday, hey, listen, I expect them to still be here once September rolls around. Are you confident like he is, or are you seeing signs that maybe finally, after just a decade run here, they've been being dominant, that they're showing signs of this legacy, this dynasty now perhaps being over?
I think they're starting to show some cracks. I'm not going to rule them out, just because they're so good and they have been, and they've been injured with their starting rotation, and it looked like they were starting to make some headway there when they were in Mexico and playing, and then the next series after that. But I thought that it was a good sign there. The Mariners, took care of business there, and the pitching in general, I think is going to be all right. But their bullpen's been horrific, and Raleigh's home run off a hater, man. I think we know what Cal did this winter. He worked on his right-handed swing, didn't he? I mean, it looks so much better. So I think that that's been a big surprise with the Astros. Certain pitching, health-wise, everyone has to kind of deal with that, and they don't have as much depth. But Hader, the big money guy, and Presley, those two guys have been nails in the bullpen over the last 5 seasons. Two of the top relievers in the sport. And they have really struggled out of the gate. And so you start to wonder, like those games that you lose, they have a lasting effect when you have the bullpen struggle like that.
Looking back on it, and we'll let the season play out, Jim, but looking back on it, if Houston can't turn it around, are they going to regret spending that money on Hader just because if they took a guy out of that spot that had World Series experience, postseason experience, was a favorite in that clubhouse, and you removed him from his role and put him in a different spot, are they going to the potential look back and regret that decision?
It's really interesting because I've had a closer in the past or two that were outstanding in the 9th inning and could not pitch the 8th. They just were wired differently. And even now, like Craig Kimbrell, when you've gotten him and taken him and you put him in the 8th inning and you had a closer behind him, it's not the same. There is something, they're just wired to be on that tightrope without a safety net, and that adrenaline rush and the stuff and the mindset and all these things that kind of come with being a successful 9th inning guy that a lot of teams, they kind of downplay now. They're like, oh, those are interchangeable parts. Presley, I think, was wired that way. He says he could handle the 8th, but it doesn't look like it. At the moment. And that's and he was a leader in the clubhouse. You remember a couple of years ago when Seattle had Kendall Graveman, right? And they traded him to Houston at the deadline, and they got Toro back, I think it was, and it changed the mix and the dynamic in that clubhouse for a week. And they didn't get to the postseason because of that, right? So
sure.
Houston's kind of going through something similar. But it's been going on a little longer than I thought, and I think that's the thing. It does happen on occasion. We've seen it in that division, both with the Mariners and the Astros.
Something happened on Friday, and let me just preface this by saying you're dealing with someone who is very Oliver Stone-like.
Yep.
In conspiracy theories, okay? Yep. And it's a problem of mine. It's a disease. I can't change it, Jim. But I'm watching the game on Friday. George Kirby gets taken out of the game. He's pitching great. He's been pitching great the 3 previous starts, and he's 88 pitches. And everyone's going, I don't get it. What are we doing here? Why is he coming out of the game? Now, he dealt with this last year when they pulled him right around this time, or they left him in a little longer. Then he had the hissy fit afterwards about it and all that kind of stuff. And then it comes out, well, no, he's been dealing with a knee injury. He's got knee soreness. And okay. And the reporters asked him about it, and he was just kind of odd how he responded to it. Like, maybe it's a little sore, but it's not a big deal, but didn't really talk about it much. I am under the impression that maybe he does have a little knee soreness, so I don't want to ever say that he doesn't, because, the Mariners could get in trouble for that. It, to me, felt like it was we're just taking him out of the game because he's at 88 pitches. And we can come up with something. Maybe he is dealing with a sore knee, but it's not really the issue. The issue is just that he's at 88.
Yep.
And again, I look at the world differently, Jim, but it just kind of screamed that way to me. Do we have any more? Do you have any more info on maybe how potentially serious that injury is, or are you kind of subscribing with me a little bit and going down that Oliver Stone lane?
So I checked in a little bit on this, and while it wasn't a direct answer, it was kind of more of insinuating that here with this knee that he has been dealing with it a little bit. It's not, they don't view it as a major issue, but because they took him out of 88 pitches to kind of manage it for the long haul, and almost like, okay, they're managing the workload. And I want to say, Kirby, I was trying to remember the circumstance where he got himself into a little bit of hot water where he didn't remember a couple of years ago, or last year, 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, where he questioned whether he should have been still out there, right? And that didn't go very well.
Yeah, last year. It was last year, yeah.
So it didn't go well. So I think, from his side of things, he's not going to certainly admit that he's dealing with anything. And, I think there's kind of that aspect of it. And, I think from the injury side of things, because of the length of the season, because he was pitching well, and it is fair to us, to kind of take what they're saying with you can always take it with a grain of salt, but I think for me, it seemed to match up, that they were just managing it and to not be overly concerned with it at the moment. So it's something to keep an eye on, though, for sure. Yeah.
Josh Rojas has been sensational since taking over in that leadoff spot. He's playing third base. J.P. Crawford's been out since April 23rd. Now, there's this old, saying in any sport, you should not lose your position spot based on injury. Right. When he comes back, and we don't know how long really JP is still going to be out for, dealing with that core injury is always difficult, oblique. Would you keep Rojas hitting leadoff, or would you put Crawford back in there? Because listen, he's a veteran, he's a leader on the team. He showed it last year, he can handle that. What would you do if you were advising the Mariners when he comes back?
So and Crawford was taking some ground balls, so he is progressing a little bit, but it still may be a little while. But I will say this: you got to get Crawford going, right? Yeah, and the struggles there early were real, but what he's capable of doing. And I suspect they probably had a conversation with Rojas, like, hey, we're going to move you in a leadoff spot because we think you're the next best candidate. But at some point when JP comes back, he's going to go back into that position in the lineup. And hopefully, Rojas continues to swing a hot bat and you move him down and he gives you production, further down in the lineup. Because that's certainly the Mariners need a little bit more depth in that lineup overall. But I'm more of the, listen, Crawford has kind of showed himself and really almost basically broken out on the offensive side since he's been in Seattle. And, you kind of go to that track record. But I will say this, you keep that in the back of your mind on Rojas. Like, okay, Crawford, struggles a little bit more once he's back in that leadoff spot. I wouldn't wait too long before you get Rojas back in there. So it's kind of a good problem to have. Very rarely, though, does it turn out like this. It's you a lot of times see one guy goes into that leadoff spot and he can't handle it, and you're now mixing and matching until the guy comes back. This has been a nice, pleasant surprise. And Rojas is a good little player, as you've seen.
What about this idea? This was brought up by Bill Kruger. I know you know Bill, and he joins the show on Mondays as well. What about the idea of JP hitting leadoff? Because we want to see, most people want to see Rojas play every day. This is even an occasional left-hand pitcher. We just want to see him in the lineup because his bat has been so good. Why not? What about JP at leadoff and Rojas hitting second and you move Julio to third?
I think you absolutely could do that. I think Julio would be all about it. A lot of that is, the flow, balance of the lineup. That would lengthen their lineup, though, and as long as Julio's okay with it, which I'm sure he would be, I think it gives you a little interesting dynamic at the top that, we haven't seen out of there. So, here's the one thing I will say, teams across the league, you see Aaron Judge, in the 2 spot, or Soto in the 2 spot. Like, their best hitters on the teams, they're getting them in the 2 hole because that's the greatest number of at bats, and they can impact, the lineup greater in the 2 rather than the 3, which is a little bit more new school than old school. And I'm okay either way with it. I really am. 2 or 3, to me, you got to have, the guy in the 9 hole who's normally not a good hitter, getting on base ahead for your 2-hole hitter to drive in a ton of runs. So I don't think that it adds up quite to me as I've seen it here over the last 4 or 5 years. But they're also talking about the end of the game, that fourth or sometimes that fifth at bat. A lot of times either continues the game through the 2-hole or stops there. With your 3-hole hitter, usually your best guy sitting there with his bat in his hands going, crap, I wish he was one hitter too soon. So I think that's where the metrics play into it that I've seen more. It's like, okay, that 9th inning, you'd love to have that guy, your best hitter, up. He's getting that opportunity when he's in the 2-hole. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to move Julio out of there.
Okay. A few more quick hitters for you. The Rojas trade to San Diego. What do you like about it? What do you, from the Padres perspective and then from the Marlins perspective, if you like it from the Marlins perspective?
I don't like it from the Marlins perspective. I'll start there just because they basically threw up the white flag. They're done. Their season's over. And they got to the postseason last year. Last time they got to the postseason in a full season was 2003. And they got there. There's something they could build on. They get a new general manager in there, and he's tearing the team apart. Terrible, terrible move. They've got prospects that are, they're okay. They're not great. I think with San Diego, what I like about San Diego, he's aggressive. AJ Preller's aggressive. They needed a guy like him. The kid, he can hit at the top of the line. He can play second, play first. Like he's a really good fit, and he really gives them a dynamic that they didn't have. And it didn't cost them any money other than minimum salary. Miami paid down the entire amount except for the minimum salary, so they still have payroll flexibility to go make a couple other trades as the summer goes on.
Who are you buying right now in baseball?
Phillies, Orioles, those two for sure. If you want to try to buy a team that is underachieved so far, but it's going to, I think, go on a run, would be Cincinnati once they get help. They have their leadoff hitter, TJ Friedl. Speaking of leadoff hitters who have been missing, it's affected Cincinnati a lot. TJ Friedl's a guy that you won't hear a lot about, but he's their center fielder. He's an excellent leadoff hitter. So he's coming back this week. I just talked to their general manager, Nick Krall. So I think they're a team that will start to take off. Their pitching has kind of settled in, but their offense has not been good all the way up and down for the most part. So there's too many guys struggling right now for them to continue that. And I think they're poised to go on a run. So if you want to buy low right now, it's Cincinnati.
Okay, who are you not buying right now? Maybe it's playing above their weight.
I think Milwaukee's playing above their weight, their offense in particular, and even their pitching. They've had, they traded a couple of their good pitchers. Their bullpen with Devin Williams, he's still out. I don't think their offense is for real. The Cubs kind of, I thought, showed them who was the boss in that division this past weekend, with the exception of Friday night. They really outpitched them. I think they shut down this offense. The offense that was off the charts good. And I'm like, I still don't see it, even when they were, number one in the sport. So, I think that they're not. I don't think they're for real at least in my mind. They'll be in the mix, but they're not like one of the best teams. But by record, they were one of the best teams. But I don't think they're one of the best teams.
Okay, last thing for you: are you surprised the best hitter and best player in baseball is doing it with one arm? That being Ohtani.
I'm not. This guy is unbelievable. He's got multi-hit games in like half of the ones that they've played. It's really absurd. And it's funny because you go, oh, what could he do if he doesn't have to focus on both pitching and hitting? Yeah. And now we're seeing it, right? The lineup, right? When I saw the Mets play the Dodgers 2 weeks ago, I thought that was a good time to play them because they were struggling offensively. Now you don't want to go near them. The Mariners put the Braves in a funk offensively, and then the Dodgers put the hammer down on them this weekend. Like they went 1-5 in that road trip. Atlanta did that offense, and it's mostly because of the pitching of the Mariners and the offense that the Dodgers showed.
There he is, Jim Duquette, former Major League Baseball GM for the Mets and Orioles. MLB Network Radio can catch his show there on Sirius XM. Follow him on X at Jim Duquette GM. It's all brought to you by Flatstick Pub. You're the best, Jim. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, bud.